I would like to apologize in advance if I mispronounce anything. I might say some of these words in a Nahuatl or Spanish-speaking way, and I do apologize for that. Generations of Japanese Americans celebrate San Jose's Obon Festival. While San Jose's Japantown has seen family restaurants close and new apartment towers change the neighborhood, at least one tradition has been steady for 84 years, the annual Obon Festival. The Obon Festival, known as a gathering of joy, is a Japanese Buddhist custom honoring the dead and is marked by a traditional dance, Bon Odori. Phyllis Yoshikawa, 77, has been dancing at the Obon Festival since she was 12. Yoshikawa, born in January 1942, months before her family was forced to relocate to the Poston internment camp in Arizona. When they were finally released from the camp and returned to California, her family gravitated towards San Jose's Japantown, and she has danced the Obon since. Every year, there's someone in the family who passes away who I honor, said Yoshikawa. Last year was the first time she did not dance because of a leg injury. The festival is rooted in the story of one of the original Buddha's disciples, Magolana, whose mother had died and passed into a hell known as the realm of the hungry ghost. Distraught, the disciple asked the Buddha how he could liberate her from the state, and the Buddha said he should offer a selfless feast for his fellow monks. After the feast, the monk sees his mother released from hell and begins dancing in joy, with the other monks joining him. Every year at Obon, dancers with the temple invite attendees to join them in Bon Odori to honor the dead, which important is instructions of the Buddha to go out and be involved in the community, said Gerald Sakamoto, head minister of the San Jose Buddhist Church, Betsuni, which hosts the festival every year. Whether the story is taken literally or metaphorically, the festival is not only thanking the dead for being mindful of how life is sustained by our relationships. Sakamoto said, "If we see death only as an end, we do not see how relationships continue to be part of our lives." Excerpt from the Mercury News, written by Tai Bo, published July 14th, 2019.
Welcome back to our little podcast, where we talk about the occult, the supernatural, and ancient spiritualism. I want to start off this episode by clarifying that this is only a brief insight into Japanese spiritualism, folklore, and urban legend. We could sit here and discuss for hours about all of these aspects, but today we're just going to brush up on some basic concepts and individual stories that we've found in our research. A lot of Japanese spiritualism and a lot of their folklore really has deep roots into things like Buddhism and Shinto. Vanessa's already touched up a little bit on some examples of some of the Buddhism that has been represented in some Japanese stories and cultural festivals. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Shinto right now. Shinto is a Japanese-originated religion that centers around the concept of kami, a form of gods or spirits tied to the natural world. In a way, it serves the same function as many polytheistic religions, as it explains a natural phenomenon that we all experience while simultaneously introducing traditions that allow us to honor nature. Kami aren't something seen as separate from nature, but as part of it in itself. They are often manifestations of elements of our world, such as mountains or rivers. They can also represent wild animals, forces of nature, or spirits of honored deceased. They hold positive and negative traits, holding elements of both good and evil. A brilliant perspective of Shinto is actually in Miyazaki's Spirited Away. Vanessa, have you ever seen that movie?
I have not seen that movie. You know I haven't. I've never seen any of his movies.
It's a really good example, as it covers a lot of perspectives into sort of what a lot of rituals are, like honoring spirits, a lot of different sort of interpretations of what kami and I think to some degree yokai are, which I'll get into yokai in just a second here. It's a little different. But a lot of times, a lot of Japanese spirits are shown in the forms of a lot of different interpretations. You'll see dragons representing lakes or different sort of animals representing the mountains, the hills, a lot of times in the forms of animals in order to represent these things. Sometimes they go in a completely different direction, which I'll get into a little bit with yokai.
I've heard good things about his movies, don't get me wrong, and I've seen like previews and stuff, but when they were playing on Toonami, I was out doing hood rat shit with my friends. Yeah, I was just being a skonka, so I missed that part. I missed that part of Toonami.
Yeah, they had an entire month where I think they were playing it every single day. It's a great movie. It's one of my favorites. I should definitely make you watch it.
You know, it's like the Star Wars thing. Everybody says they're going to like sit down and have me watch that or the Star Wars movies with me, and nobody ever does. So I'm going to hold you to that. That's what I want for my birthday from you, okay?
I mean, in my opinion, and people are going to get a little angry at me for this, but in my opinion, it's more worth it than watching any of the Star Wars movies. Rare opinion, I love Star Wars. I think it's great. I believe it's overrated, but I also think it's really fucking good.
That's what I want for you for my birthday. Like, fuck it, we're gonna watch some Miyazaki films, okay?
Yeah, we can do that. So next, what I want to talk about is yokai. Vanessa, you should have access to the same photos I have here.
Yes, I do. And I did look up a little bit about them prior to this episode, and I did find them to be kind of interesting because they're basically so multifaceted. And the art style that has come about with them is this beautiful macabre. I looked up more of the art, and I was just sitting there fascinated by it. There is a really famous artist. What's his name? Toriyama Sakian? He has truly taken this art style of depicting the yokai and making it like just some of the coolest art that I've ever seen. I like creepy looking macabre art, so.
And it definitely makes sense that it is sort of a macabre depiction because yokai in its definition sort of means somewhere between like ghost and apparition. It's a sort of a supernatural spirits in folklore. They're usually characterized, they can be a lot of times something expected to see in a horror movie sometimes, and they can possess animalistic features. There's things like the kappa, which is kind of like a turtle looking thing. There's kitsune, which are sort of fox spirits, and there is the tanuki, which I kind of love and I've known about for a while, which is depicted as this big raccoon with giant fucking cojones.
Okay.
Here, I'll send you a picture.
The suspense is killing me.
Give you an idea, and if you guys don't know, as Casey said before, I like to say, you can look it up.
Yo, that's exactly how I imagined that shit to look like. Hey, okay. Question. Do you remember those bouncy balls from elementary school with the handle you sat on top of? That's exactly what that reminds me of.
A lot of yokai are portrayed sort of as these very demonic looking spirits, things that you would imagine in horror movies. Some of them come out more like these animal spirits. A lot of them have those different traits again. Things like wanting to play tricks on humans, on merchants. Some of them like to do good things, some of them like to do bad things. And that's one of the reasons why it becomes so interesting in a lot of this folklore. Actually, the tanuki by itself, some of the more intelligent and adept ones tend to do things such as gambling, drinking, and even administration. It's pretty cool. I think to a degree, and this isn't as much of a fact that I found on paper, but it kind of plays into the same ideology with how kami work, is I think both kami and yokai sort of serve this folklore function to help explain the world around us. Some more than others, but I definitely think there is that play into it where having stories that teach morals or that teach how rivers were formed or mountains came to be or why we should respect the elements around us because they can be dangerous and powerful or just be something that deserves respect. It's something that just sort of makes sense when you're talking about stories that have been told for generations or just parts of culture. I don't know where to fit this, but I wanted to talk about how it's interesting because yokai can also be portrayed as deathly spirits, but also inanimate objects, like a lantern. It's also pretty cool.
Yeah, I was hearing about that, and that's in some of the art, it looks kind of interesting because it's just like these objects that look demonic, and it kind of reminds me of that Brad Pitt movie where he goes in and like everything's animated. Everything is an animated object, and it's like a character. Have you ever seen that movie?
I think I know what you're talking about. But it's really cool because when you get into a lot of the different kinds of yokai and everything like that, you find things that seem to be more common and lesser, and some things that are less common but more powerful and stuff like that. And it's just really interesting because I know this is where a lot of stuff is pulled for modern day stories for like animes and stuff like that. But it's kind of cool, just the concept of all this stuff just existing, whether it's something in your actual belief or not. It makes for a very fantastic just sort of mindset and imaginative sort of stories to be told. So this part in the podcast, I have a bit of a story for you guys. It's something you may recognize, may not recognize. Personally, it's something that I heard before, probably online. I don't even remember how long ago. And it's quite an interesting story. Well, how about I just dive into it and I'll explain what the story's called after, because it'll be pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to paint a story for us to imagine. A child walks home from school during the evening. It's just before sunset and there aren't too many people outside. It's quiet, warm, and soon enough it'll be dark. After passing a dark underpass, a previously silent woman standing aside stops the passing child. Her face is covered. A scarf, a mask, her hair, it doesn't really matter. Her face is covered, and that's the point. She asks the child, "Am I pretty?" Something seems off about her, a dark presence that doesn't seem quite normal. The child, although scared, doesn't run, but instead decides to answer her question. He says yes. Removing her covering, the woman responds to the child. Even like this, she reveals a smiling face, with open slits, left to right. This is the legend of the slit-mouthed woman. It's a story that took off around 1979 and was well known all across Japan. To this day, the legend has been spun around the world and has become more increasingly known. It even has different variants depending on where you hear it and who you hear it from. And some of the more well-told variants. If you ask her if she looks pretty, your options basically are, you say yes, and she asks how about now, and pulls off the scarf. If you say no, she takes out her pair of scissors that she has and kills you with it. When she asks, how about now, she cuts you in half with a pair of scissors, if you say no. If you say yes, she slits your mouth so that you look like her, with slits from left ear to right ear. I'm going to butcher the name, but I'm going to try it, okay? Kichisake Ona. I'm probably fucked that up so bad, but it's the story I'm referring to. Things like this, there's a sort of almost simplicity to the story, but at the same time, there's this sort of macabre darkness that has a very unique take to it that really highlights some of the essence that you see in a lot of Japanese horror, which really does have roots down into some of the things that we talked about today, like Japanese folklore. Things like The Tale of Two Sisters and countless other things. I mean, I think a lot of times they have a rep for some of their stuff that some Japanese media coming out sometimes has a reputation for being really weird. But at the same time, it's sort of fascinating just in its uniqueness and creativity. And I mean, when it comes to Japanese horror, just the pure fright that it gives out. Things like stories of dolls that grow hair. And I know there was a movie that I've seen a long time ago about a girl whose hair never stopped growing and it would kill people, but somehow, some way, it still is just really creepy.
I remember when I first started to get into international horror films, and the first time I seen a Japanese horror flick, it was called Audition. It came out in 1999, and that movie tripped me the fuck out. Because it's, I don't know, have you ever seen that movie?
That one? No, I haven't.
Okay, it's about this chick, and she goes into an audition, and the dude said he's going to call her back, and I'm, terribly summarizing this, but she's this dainty, cute, little, petite girl, and she is just ruthless, and I love every minute of it. Like, she's ruthless, and it's just kind of mind-boggling that this person is capable of doing these terrible things, but it's very suspenseful and mind-boggling and gory without overt blood. So I think that's a nice style.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's when I realized American horror ain't shit.
Yeah. I know a lot of Japanese media really just has roots back to kabuki, traditional, or I guess classic Japanese dance drama. It's kind of interesting, and I think a lot of times we forget about this sometimes, that just when we tell stories, when we watch movies, how much roots and how much history goes behind how we tell these stories and the things that inspire us. And I think a lot of times people take that for granted, about how much classic theater goes into something, about how much history our narrative style that we use has, and we don't even think about that when we tell stories, because it's something we grew up with, or it's something that's just so deep in the back of our minds we don't even realize it's there. It's fascinating.
I've actually been able to see a kabuki theater before. It was a field trip. I want to say it was the San Jose Center of Performing Arts. I was really young, but I remember it was really breathtaking. That was one of the only field trips of theater that I went to that I actually was engaged in. It was something light, like it wasn't something super dramatic because it was for the kids, Actually, I would love to go to one of those again. That'd be nice.
Hey?
Yeah.
I mean, if the world opens back up.
Right?
It's always the future.
It's a tragedy.
Well, I think we're running short on our time for today, but I really am enjoying diving into things that aren't Western-centric for once.
Yeah. I enjoyed hearing you telling me, but this is not something that I was too familiar with. And it's nice to sometimes sit back and just give my commentary on what tradition to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Definitely. So, I think this is probably where we're going to leave off today. But once again, thank you. It's great being able to have these episodes and have everyone listen, and we appreciate you. Bye. I just want to take a moment to shout out and say thank you to a few people that just make it possible to keep making episodes like this and make our lives easier. Thank you for helping us and donating on our Patreon. Ben Turco and Rita Pillar. We love you guys. You're amazing.